Well, on one hand, our viewers can use models to be strategic partners for operating people in business units. On the other hand, they can also use these same models to be honest brokers for corporate decision makers. From your perspective, is there a conflict between these two roles?
In any model, people can skew a model one way or the other. Organizations have to build trust of the people that they're getting, and managements have to have trust that the people are giving them a fair representation, not a skewed representation. All organizations thrive on openness and truthfulness because you can't make a good business decision without knowing what really the truth is. You're hiding it from, you're never going to make a good decision unless people have told you the good, the bad, and the ugly, not just how you're going to climb every mountain. And so I think that goes first and foremost. The other is building an organization that, in fact, is sort of, I hate to use the word self-policing, but where management, operating management, if they want to make a case, their compensation is tied to the business case. So that, and I think particularly right now we're hearing this quite a bit in the press about management who got big bonuses last year and now their companies are near bankruptcy this year. No business decisions where you're making investments pay off or have a way of being evaluated in the short term. They all have, in some fashion, we talked about building a building or making an acquisition. Those are longer-term investments. The payoff to the company has to be mirrored by the payoff to the operating people who recommended going down a specific path. So we talk about, and there are ways of doing it. In fact, we have a chapter on compensation. EVA is a buzzword that gets thrown around about how you tie compensation to the projections that people have made. This is an important part of any organization.
In connection with their financial reporting responsibilities, many of our viewers hear about models and about valuing and reporting share-based compensation. For a long time, the only model that companies chose in this context was the Black-Scholes option pricing model, right?
Well, the whole thing of Black-Scholes or pricing of compensation, share-based compensation, which gave rise to the idea of expensing options, is tied to the financial statements more to what's being given. The choice of option model is very important, in part because if you pick the wrong option model and you're pricing and you're giving too much value to the option because, for example, Black-Scholes assumes certain characteristics of the underlying stock. It doesn't take into account the stock that might be obtained has certain restrictions. It has to be played with. There are more sophisticated models, lattice models, etc., which mimic with the same conditions the result of Black-Scholes, but in fact allow the analysts, allow the CFO, the controller, to actually control the various assumptions better and get a more accurate representation of the real pattern that's of expected exercise of the options and the real pattern of retention of the people, because all of these options have you have to vest in the options, etc. So the lattice model is a much more sophisticated. A lot of people pick Black-Scholes because they like simplicity. Business is not simple. Simplicity oftentimes leads to the wrong answer.
Well, in a similar vein, Roger, to what extent can we use these models retrospectively to justify to regulators, to the courts, how a decision was arrived at?
You can use models in two ways. Oftentimes, we're asked, and I happen to appear as an expert witness in various litigated matters, what should have been the value placed on an investment? What should have been the value placed on stock? For example, if it was in Delaware court where there's a squeeze-out merger and someone wanted their valuation rights. You can put yourself back in the position and use a model to basically reconstruct the thought process, the valuation process that would have gone at that time. We know that no expected outcome will ever be mirrored precisely with what actually occurs. So the care that has to be taken is what were, at a period of time, what were the expectations, what was the state of the world at that time. The one thing that does happen is every day the state of the world changes. No one can make a perfect prediction. So when you're stuck with that, you've got two elements. You've got the measurement tool, the model, but you also have what was the state of the world and why were there changes subsequent that were not in my control, and what was the impact of those subsequent changes on the value. So you can use it as a tool in retrospect to sort of measure what were each of the elements that caused your projection to be wrong.
Oh, you've covered a lot of topics for us this month, Roger. If our viewers could take one thought away from this discussion, besides buying a copy of the third edition of your book, what would you like it to be?
I found in 30 years of being in business, a valuation consultant, looking at projects, businesses, I've always found it exciting. There are a lot of people who have really boring jobs in this world. If these kind of elements, everyone should say, everybody has a bad day, but they should look at what business brings in terms of opportunity for self-fulfillment and mental challenge. And I've always found business to be exciting because of that.
Duff and Phelps, Roger Grabowski, thanks for bringing us up to date.
It's my pleasure.